Understanding flood zones and insurance in Southwest Florida. When buying a home is essential, we need to understand the potential risks that come with living in a coastal region. Florida has around 1,350 miles of coastlines, second only to Alaska, not to mention Florida River. One of the risks here, like many areas of our country, is flooding. There are areas in Southwest Florida are prone to flooding, especially during the hurricane season. So understanding flood zones and flood insurance and its cost is a crucial part of the home buying process. So what are flood zones? Flood zones are areas designated by the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, based on the risk of flooding. These zones are determined by a variety of factors, such as the proximity to water, elevation, and historical flood data. In Southwest Florida, our coastal areas, especially those near rivers, canals, or the Gulf of Mexico, are more likely to be in high-risk flood zones, and FEMA has mapped these zones into categories such as high-risk zones, A or V zones. These are areas with a higher likelihood of flooding and often requiring mandatory flood insurance if financing your purchase. Next zones are moderate to low-risk zones, B, C, or X zones. Homes in these zones have a lower risk of flooding, but that doesn't mean they're completely safe from floods. Lenders may not require flood insurance in these areas, but it's still a good idea to consider it. Should you check the flood zone? Absolutely. Before making an offer on a property or during its inspection period, we will check to see whether it's in a flood zone and type of zone. This will help you understand the flood risk and whether you'll be required to purchase flood insurance and its cost. If the property is in a high-risk flood zone, your lender will likely require flood insurance as part of your mortgage. Flood insurance is a separate policy from homeowners insurance, and it covers damages caused by flooding, something typical homeowners insurance doesn't include. If the property is in a designated flood zone, this is a non-negotiable expense, and not having flood insurance can result in financial hardship if a flood occurs. Should you buy flood insurance even if the home isn't in a flood zone? Well, even if the property you're eyeing is not in a high-risk flood zone, it's still a smart move to consider purchasing flood insurance. Southwest Florida weather can be unpredictable, and storms can cause flooding in areas that aren't typically at risk. Flood insurance can protect you from expensive repairs if a flood happens, even in a lower-risk area. You may also find that some lenders recommend or encourage flood insurance, even for properties outside the high-risk zones, just as a precaution. The cost of flood insurance in these areas can be lower than in high-risk zones, but it's still an important safeguard for your investment. How much does flood insurance cost? The cost of flood insurance can vary depending on a few factors, such as the flood zone, the elevation of the home, and the coverage you choose. If the home is in a high-risk flood zone, the premiums will be higher, and the cost of insurance can significantly impact your monthly payments. Homes outside of high-risk zones generally have more affordable premiums. However, it's worth noting that flood insurance rates can change, especially after major weather events or changes in FEMA's flood zone maps. So even if the property isn't in a flood zone now, it's good to keep an eye on any changes in flood zone designations that might affect your insurance rates in the future. What does flood insurance cover? Flood insurance typically covers damage to the home's structure and the contents inside, including personal belongings like furniture, electronics, and appliances. However, there are limits to what flood insurance will cover, so it's important to review your policy carefully. Bottom line, understanding flood zones and the need for flood insurance is an essential part of buying a home in Southwest Florida. Always check whether the property is in a flood zone, and even if it's not required, consider getting flood insurance for added peace of mind. While it may increase your monthly costs, flood insurance can safeguard against the unpredictable weather.
Good morning, guys. This is Tommy, Florida Realtor. I've lived in Florida since 1972. I had an uncle who was a farmer at Plant City, and another one who was a shrimper in Cedar Key. Got a lot of fond memories of my Uncle Bob and Cedar Key, and growing up as a boy, sleeping on the beaches, fishing all the time, going out on the shrimp boat. It was awesome. But all good things come to an end. Cedar Key was a major shrimping site here in Florida, but hurricanes had a different idea. They got walloped, they got walloped pretty hard. If you're moving to Florida, you need to consider the impact that hurricanes and flooding has here in the Florida environment. Hurricanes are a natural part of our environment. They provide an awful lot of rain that recharges our aquifers down below. But having insurance is a requirement if you're going to finance your home. Type of insurance depends upon its amount of risk and the lender you choose. So, areas that may not be prone to flooding doesn't mean they won't flood. So, when you're thinking about buying a home here in Southwest Florida, one of the things you need to do is have a conversation with an insurance agent right up front. Insurance used to be cheaper in Florida. It's more expensive now than it was. But I've seen this before. Hurricane comes to town, does some damage. Insurance companies falter, fail, others leave the state. The state moves up with citizens, and we're fine. Over time, more and more insurance companies come back to Florida and the rate drops down. But insurance costs are significant and need to be understood and considered when buying a home. You have to budget for them. So if I hope you've looked at my post here or my YouTube video and gotten some valuable knowledge on understanding flood zones and the impact that flooding can have on your home purchase. If you have any questions or you want to discuss flooding here in Florida and the insurance situation that we're in, give me a call, 239-313-9209, 239-313-9209, or just shoot me a quick email to tomfmiller7@gmail, and we'll go over and answer any questions that you may have. Hope you guys have had an awesome day. I look forward to speaking and hearing from you. Talk to you soon. Bye.